Hey there, I'm magic based and I sometimes speedrun Crawl. Is my introduction into speedrunning as a whole, and I particularly liked that because the game is procedurally generated, each round of the game is different. This makes Crawl different from most speedruns that focus on perfecting a set path of the same inputs at the right time. I'm here to show you what I know about this game and how I speedrun this game. I'm going to assume you already know what Crawl is and how the gameplay works moving forward. That being said, here's an outline of the general strategy and facts. You want to be as accurate as you can with your attacks. Each wasted attack is a wasted time, and this will improve the more you play the game and get used to the small pool of weapons you'll typically use. Try to wrangle monsters together in order to hit them multiple monsters at once. This will improve your room clearing speed. Searching for chests and objects freezes you in place for a small amount of time, and they could also spawn somewhere not in your path, so it's generally not really worth going on your way to search for them. Also, it's pretty pointless to open a chest for gold if you already visited the shop, since you won't be visiting a second shop anywhere down the line. I do leave a small asterisk here though, because searching objects does have a chance to drop experience, so an elite run might include getting lucky and collecting these experience drops. But that's a strategy you really should only be doing if you're going for extremely competitive times. You don't typically need to go chasing after dropped experience points during the run. You can track them from pretty far away and from pretty far distances. You want to enter the second floor as soon as you see it. The boss doesn't spawn on the first floor, so every run has to end at least on the second floor. Also, in between floors, time will be lost waiting on the CPUs to upgrade their monsters. Although you should still exit the floor if you see it, it can be good to know if you exit the floor at level 3 or 4, the CPUs will only have enough RAF to evolve one monster. However, exiting the floor at level 3 can be risky, since there may not be enough experience on the second floor for you to reach level 10. At level 5, the CPUs will have enough RAF to evolve 2 monsters, adding about 9 to 12 seconds. Level 7 is probably the worst level to exit on, as they will have enough RAF to evolve all 3 of the monsters, taking the most amount of time on the evolution screen. A special case can happen at level 8. If you're lucky enough, all the CPUs may only upgrade 1 monster, by spending 25 RAF upgrading that monster again and having no additional RAF to upgrade anymore. These 2 evolutions are actually faster than exiting level 5 or 6, since they don't have to go back to select the real monster to upgrade. However, it's not completely bad if they upgrade more monsters, since these evolved monsters do drop more experience per kill. Of course, you do have to get a bit lucky and hope they spawn as that monster. Speaking of monster spawning, when monsters spawn, they have about 2 seconds of invincibility, so you can't immediately attack them. However, they do lose this invincibility as they perform an action, so you can hang around the pentagram they spawn, and the AI will typically immediately do an attack if you're close enough, allowing you to dodge it and immediately attack them for a faster clear time. Lastly, avoid this shielded skeleton statue if you can. Just move on to the next room if you see it. It can take too long to kill and is often a run killer. Other peak statues are fine as they give a large amount of experience. Although on the lower difficulties, the AI can sometimes take a bit long to possess a statue and will hover around it before finally going through. I'm not positive if it's always beneficial to wait around for them or not. Moving on to the deities, for yourself I'd say these are the options for which you should worship. And it's really only one choice for the vast majority of you, and that's Sha. He seems to be almost tailor-made for consistent and fast times. First off, he is tied with the highest starting strength of 9, the other 2 being Zophont and Momot. And this 9 strength is massive when the other deities mostly start with between 4 to 6 strength. He also starts with Vampiric Ring, which gives a rare and consistent form of healing. Since Crawl is designed with you dying in mind, it is important to finish each round deathless. And the Vampiric Ring goes a massive way to ensuring that happens. The last 2 listed here, Gore and Shrim, are more theorycraft on my end, in which they have tons of runs in which that are not as fast, but it might be possible to get godly runs with a large amount of luck. Gore both bleeds easier, and whenever he takes a hit, therefore some items in the shop become more useful, most importantly Murphy's Belt. Murphy's Belt store discount is often hard to accomplish with the other gods, but may often happen with Gore. With this discount you could purchase more than you usually can, making up for its shortcomings. Other useful bleed items would be the red soul gem and the blood amulets. Although this might only be viable on the easy difficulty, since he only starts with 3 vitality, making death much more common. Shrimp starts off with 40 extra gold and a lucky claw, effectively doubling the amount of gold you have to spend as the other gods of 60. Therefore, with the perfect shop, he could make up for his shortcomings and low starting strength of 4 by purchasing an extra 60 gold worth of items. All that's left is Momot, and I really like Momot, he's just cool. He's my favorite god to play in casual play and multiplayer, and currently I'm the only one who has submitted a run using him. Let's go ahead and compare him with the obvious choice of Sha. Again, to summarize why you should be choosing Sha is that he has 9 strength, and it is easier to complete a run due to his healing. However, you don't actually need this healing in a speedrun. You could just get hit less. I mean, there is some amount of time to be saved by face tank in certain situations, but it's pretty minute. And since Momot also has a starting strength of 9, you can get some benefits that Sha doesn't have. He starts with both Enlightened and Heathen Scripture, which decreases the cooldown of your spells and increases their damage. The only spell I would really recommend to buy on Momot is Fetid Discharge due to its price and damage output, as Momot can deal a lot of damage with Fetid Discharge on levels beginning to compare to Berserker damage. Also, since I'm not quite sure where else to mention this, Fetid Discharge has one other use case in the boss room of Kurok, as you can use it to break down the door leading to him, saving a second or two. Just make sure you are very close to the door when you do it. Even if you don't pick up Fetid Discharge, Enlightened Scripture is always nice to have, lowering the cooldown of your roll and even Berserker. Now to Cha's advantage is that he has 2 higher starting agility, and I know this is a speedrun, but movement speed isn't actually all that important in this run, mainly because you'll be running from one locked room into another, so increasing your agility isn't all that much of a time save. Still though, I would recommend starting out with Cha, and maybe down the line giving Momot a try, that is if you think you could survive a run without dying with him, and maybe even then, maybe not. Now let's go over the deities you would like the CPUs to have, since you can't actually choose for them, and it will be random. So before the run even begins, you have to spend some time to re-roll the CPU a few times until you get a roll that you are satisfied with. The obvious best roll is playing against 3 Glubs. The Glubfish is a tier 2 monster that he starts out with, and this monster gives more experience when killed, and this is the only advantage given to this deity, which is beneficial for you during a speedrun. Also, getting 3 Glubs does improve Wrath math, as the CPU can possibly do only 1 evolution instead of 2 at certain levels if they choose to involve their Glub. Of course, it only matters if you get all 3 CPUs to choose Glubs, since that split is dependent on the slowest CPU. Oddsound is another deity I'm fine playing against. He doesn't give any bonuses to his monsters, although he does have a larger slime with more health. However, I find in most of my runs it's pretty rare for a slime to spawn in the first place, or they spawn a slime at a time where no additional time is taken to kill it. At worst, a slime is spawned at a bad time, but this empowered slime only takes a few more hits to kill than a regular slime, so the time loss is minimal. Trim, Zophont, and Murkham is tied for the second best deity, as none of these deities give any bonuses to their ghosts or monsters. So unless you have difficulty fighting a particular monster they spawn, all of these are good deities to fight against. Qual also falls into this category of not having any bonuses as a ghost or to his monsters. However, him starting with the bow can cause problems at the starting duel. Even if he doesn't outright shoot you during a starting duel, I find it too common for him to kill another human at the start, which will deprive you of 20 gold. Therefore, I always avoid playing against him. Goloth and Tiak are probably fine to play against on lower difficulties, but they technically fall into the category of having bonuses to their ghosts or monsters. Goloth deals 25% more damage with traps, and Tiak's monsters deal more damage and have lower cooldown on their monster spells. That means if survivability is a concern, you should avoid fighting against these 2 deities. Lastly is Gore. Gore gives no benefit to his ghosts or monsters. However, one of his starting monsters is a Gargoyle Imp. The Imp can cause time loss due to his spell being a counter. If you hit this counter, it leaves you open to taking damage, but also just causes you to be stunned for about 2 to 3 seconds. Therefore, because of this, I would recommend avoid playing against Gore. These are the 3 bosses of Crawl: Kurok, Gidrock, and Tezekal. The fastest bosses to clear are Kurok and Gidrock. Kurok is probably faster at lower difficulties, and Gidrock is faster at harder difficulties. Tezekal is the slowest boss to clear by quite a bit. He has a few cutscenes during the fight which take a lot of time, and also just the nature of the fight of having to fight one enemy before you can damage the boss takes a long time. An important fact to know is that the same boss cannot appear between 2 games in a row. So if you just finish a game that had Tezekal as a boss, he won't be the boss in the next game. Later on in this guide, I'll teach you how to use the debug menu to influence which boss appears next. Now let's go over what items you should be buying at the shop. The best items you should be looking out for are the Corrupted Dagger and Shiv, Berserker, the Medal of Experience, and Murphy's Belt. All of these are must-buys, and runs where you purchase these items will most likely be your fastest runs. Following these, the next best things to buy is the Medal of Bravery, Spider Venom, the Red Soul Gem, and some high DPS cursed weapons. I'll be going over all these items in the next few slides, but let me explain the corrupted weapons here. On lower floors, there's a chance for the shop to have higher tier weapons sold, but they have a drawback. They also cost almost no gold compared to their base weapon cost. The curse could be something like causing you to vomit or temporarily turning you into a toad. Because you are very restricted in a run in terms of money, these can provide a great opportunity for a good weapon at very little cost. And if you're lucky enough, the downsides may only occur a few times during the run. I would particularly be on the lookout for a corrupted weapon in the spear class of weapons, and avoid ranged weapons as their DPS is very low. Unless you are doing a hard mode run, as you can use these as a crutch to make it more likely that you can complete a run without dying. Moving on down the list, the next tier of items are some enchanted weapons, the Shiv and Dagger, Ogre Sweat, and low quality weapons. The most common enchanted weapons you will find are Shivs and Daggers that add on a chance for some kind of elemental damage on hit. In my opinion, the additional cost isn't really worth this chance at damage, but they are still solid baseline items. The base Shiv and Dagger are probably the most common purchase you will be making, as they are the most likely items you will encounter on the first floor of the shop. They are very cheap and provide a nice boost to DPS. Ogre Sweat is the second best potion to buy to increase your strength. Some low quality, higher tiered base weapons can also spawn on the lower floors. They often have a prefix such as awkward, dull, unbalanced, rusted, and gluttons. I would most likely be looking for an item in the spear class for these weapons, alongside some of the swords. The next tier down is Fetid Discharge, Hyperdash, and the Near Death Necklace. Although I would put Fetid Discharge in the S tier category if you're playing as Momot. This is a tier where you're really scraping the bottom of the barrel and should only purchase if there's absolutely nothing better in the shop. The strongest of these would probably be the Near Death Necklace. Although you have to regulate your bleeding for it to be effective, it is essentially a permanent berserker damage buff, but it also costs 60 gold, which is your entire budget outside of a small amount of gold you might find off chests. The last tier, which I'm not even sure why I'm listing, but Floating Beam and Spirit Bow do technically increase your DPS, but they are not really worth the gold investment for that. The last item I want to talk about is the Lucky Claw. You shouldn't be purchasing this item on a run, as it doesn't become cost effective until you have purchased at least 100 gold worth of items, which is outside the main run's budget. It might be worth as there's 2 or even 3 spawn in the shop, but I can't be bothered to do that math. Let's go over the best items in a little bit more detail. When you get to the shop, you have to quickly scan the tables to see what's available and spend less time in the shop. So I've included what these items look like when they're sitting on a table so you can recognize them faster in your runs. Starting off are the Corrupted Dagger and Shiv. They have the same table sprite as a lot of the short swords, so the only way you'll be able to know is if you walk up to them. The Corrupted trait gives a 50% damage bonus, which is what makes them so good for a speedrun. The downside is that you are driven insane, which causes your movement to fluctuate from your baseline speed down to a near complete stop. However, both the Dagger and Shiv have low end lag on their attacks, so you are able to completely mitigate this downside by doing an attack as the slowdown begins. Here's what that looks like. The Medal of Experience gives you more experience when you're on a 5+ kill streak. This lowers the amount of monsters you will need to kill before reaching the portal significantly. Of course, if you purchase this item, you want to enter the portal at exactly level 10, which will be the case often, but sometimes you won't be able to, making this probably the weakest of the best items. However, what makes it interesting is that you could stack this item, potentially buying 2 if they're available. Next up is Murphy's Belt, which doubles your experience gains and gives a 40% store discount, but only while you're bleeding. Their experience gain is easy enough to manage, as it is likely you'll take some form of damage while gaining experience, and every time you get hit, it causes you to bleed for a short while. However, the store discount is a bit hard to take advantage of, as you will have to be very low health to have a consistent bleed and carry that over onto the shop. But if you can, this item essentially only costs a single gold, assuming you're working with a 60 gold budget. That's a really insane value if you're able to pull it off, and still have things worth buying with the rest of your gold. But even without this store discount, the double experience rate makes this item amazing for speedruns and all its own. Berserker is hands down the best spell in the game. It doubles your damage and increases your movement speed, and is one of the cheapest spells at only 25 gold. As there is only 9 spells you can see in the shop, this also makes it one of the most likely items you'll find on the shop. It does share its table sprite with advanced roll, so you may need to walk to it to make sure it's Berserker. However, if you don't enter the shop from the right side, you can figure out that it is Berserker by buying another item first and having between 25 and 49 gold, since advanced roll costs 50 gold and it would become crossed out. You should try to activate Berserker a tiny bit before you plan on attacking something, as there is a short startup animation to activate in it. This can be while ghosts are about to possess a pentagram or while Kurok just got knocked out. And that finishes up the S+ tier items in the shop, so let's start talking about the S tier items. The Medal of Bravery gives you bonus damage on a kill streak of 5+. I believe this bonus damage is about 50%, but I'm not actually entirely sure. But a 50% damage buff for 30 gold is pretty worth, I'd say. The Red Soul Gem greatly increases your attack speed while you're bleeding, so you'll have to manage your bleeding, but the payoff can be pretty huge for its low cost of gold. Generally, the only potions you should be buying are Spider Venom and Ogre Sweat. Both of these increase your strength by 2, Spider Venom decreases your vitality by 1, and Ogre Sweat decreases your agility by 1. And since this is a speedrun, it's perfectly acceptable to decrease your vitality by 1, since it doesn't affect your time at all. but Ogre Sweat is practically as good as well. Moving on to the hard mode runs, it is essentially the same as previous runs, and all the previous strategies still apply. However, now your health and not dying becomes a large factor in completing a run. Funnily enough, one of the most significant changes is how good the AI gets at throwing furniture at you. You'll have to be constantly aware of furniture in the rooms, and dodge them as they throw them at you. Besides that, if you are truly having a hard time not dying on this run, which would be understandable, you might have some luck dying once and waiting around to see if there's a monster statue in the next room, so you can quickly become the human again. There is one additional item I would suggest purchasing if you're having trouble surviving, and that is the Bleeding Cross. It does have a pretty hefty cost, but the amount of healing this brings is very significant. You begin to heal whenever you stand on pentagrams. For entry purchases, you should immediately stand above a pentagram whenever you enter a room, and if you enter a room with 4 pentagrams on the floor, it may be a good idea not to completely finish off one enemy, so that way you can stand on top of the pentagram during their fight. Besides that, some of the potions in the shop can increase your vitality, these being Golem Tears and the Undead Ichor. Golem Tears is probably the better of the two, as that one only decreases your agility by 1, and Undead Ichor decreases your strength by 1, which will decrease your runtime. A Human Heart also increases your vitality by 1, but I wouldn't recommend purchasing this item unless there's absolutely no other items available. Besides that, it can start becoming worth to go out of your way to search objects for potential healing items they could drop. But there's some objects on the maps that always heal you. The main ones you should be looking out for is the Restful Hearth and Dark Bonfire. These give massive heals, but in my experience are pretty rare to come by. The Pristine Amulet gives you a similar buff to the Bleeding Cross for the next battle. You will heal while standing in blood, which can give you a chance to heal a lot depending on how much time you want to invest in that. These last 3 can heal you slightly, but there is a chance for a negative side effect, such as causing you to enter a sick state in which you'll periodically vomit, or you can become poisoned, which deals damage over time. These also carry over in between floors, so there is still a risk in taking them even at the end of a floor. Take these only if you think it's worth the risk. The hard mode difficulty largely becomes learning the patterns of the CPUs. As you attempt runs, pay attention to these patterns, and that knowledge will play a larger role in your ability to complete runs. Now let's talk about the holiday events. There are 2 holiday events in Crawl, one for Halloween and one for Christmas. The Halloween event is cosmetic and replaces objects on the ground with pumpkins and bats and such. But the Christmas event is unique in that it doesn't replace any objects on the ground. Instead, it adds additional objects on the ground in the form of presents. Therefore, when you play during the Christmas event, your runs will have additional objects to search. The game uses your system clock for this event, so you can change your system clock to Christmas Eve and launch the game, then fix your system clock if that is messing with other programs of yours, and the game will stay in Christmas mode until it is closed. I was able to ask one of the devs how searching objects works, and this works for all objects, not just Christmas presents. Whenever you search an object, there is a 50% chance of nothing appearing, and a 50% chance for an object of a list of objects will fall out. He wasn't able to recall what exactly was on this list of objects, but that each entry in this list has an equal chance of occurring. Some of the entries I've seen on my runs is things like gold, life orb, experience drops, and health potions, hams, and a large amount of ectoplasm. Objects like gold, life orbs, and experience drops have multiple entries with different quantities, so these objects are more likely to drop in various quantities. Now on the easier difficulties, it still probably isn't a good idea to go searching these, since 50% of the time they offer nothing, and opening the present freezes you in place for a few frames. Also, the only real useful drop to you would be experience drops, and potentially the gold drops. However, if you have already gotten a very good time on the easier difficulties, you may find yourself looking for additional potential time save, and searching these presents is an inconsistent way of doing that via the experience drops. In the harder difficulties, I would say that it is worth searching these presents due to the healing that they could offer, especially something like health potions and hams, which could completely change a run for you. Some rooms also spawn the Christmas tree in the center, which has about like 5 or 6 presents all underneath the tree that you can open very quickly. Therefore, it might be correct to always search the tree, because you won't spend a lot of time running around since they all are in the same place. There is a debug menu hidden in this game. You can toggle it on the main menu by holding down the tab button and entering the Konami code, which is up, up, down, down, left, right, BA, enter, and then you release the tab button. There will be no indicator that you have turned it on, but you can access the debug menu both on the menu and in the game by holding down the tab button and pressing the tilde key. There's really only one use case for using the debug menu in speedruns, and that is for influencing which boss will appear. Once you start a game, open up the debug menu and select the option that says go to boss. This will allow you to check which boss spawned for this game. Doing this, just reset a game until you reach a game that has Tezuka as a boss and reset. Since the game doesn't allow the same boss to appear twice in a row, the next game will either be Kurok or Goodrock as the boss. So doing this setup will allow you to never encounter Tezuka on a run, if you're willing to do this. Is this setup worth it? Well, I'll leave that to you. It is important to keep in mind that the boss does reset every game, and not just if you see the boss or not. So if you set up to not see Tezuka and reset the run, you won't have the same control of not seeing Tezuka until you do the setup again. And that's essentially everything you need to know about speedrunning the game. Here's an outline for a typical run. First, you're going to roll for CPU deities. How much time you want to spend on this is completely up to you. Then comes the starting duel. You want to be sure to kill every human, as every human you don't kill is loss of 20 gold. Then you start on the first floor. As you start the first floor, you want to find the shop as quickly as possible, and then find the second floor trapdoor. After you enter the second floor trapdoor, the CPU will do their evolutions, and you'll just want to select ready as soon as possible here. Going through the second floor, you want to find the boss room as quickly as possible. You're going to want to enter that boss room, and then defeat the boss. And now I thought we would take a look at our run, and I'll provide some commentary about it. Here's a run of mine on easy mode. Alright. Here I am, just going to be resetting for my deities to fight against. Glurb Murkham is pretty good. This starting duel usually takes about 17 seconds to complete. And here I am, I'm just thinking about which order I want to kill them in. I think I go with counterclockwise here. Yeah. Oh, nope, I go in a zigzag motion. After that, just walk towards the door until you're finally able to leave.
This is only the beginning.
Right, these red crystal rooms are really bad to get, but you can't really have any control of it. They drop a really low amount of experience there. However, I get lucky with that drop and get like 3 or 4 experience drops, so that's pretty good. There I am, I stood by that Murkham spawn, so because I knew he was about to attack me, and I immediately attacked him back. And let's go rewind it a little bit here. Yeah. See, I'm standing next to there, and I know he's about to attack me once he spawns, so I dodge that right away and start attacking right away, because he lost invincibility after that. I see they're all together, so I'm going to make sure I want to damage them as much as possible. And there we go, reaching level 3, level 4 soon. Another red crystal room. I think if I would not have gotten so many red crystal rooms, this run would have been a lot better. I should not have taken that vitality tree, by the way. Here I am scanning everything. I see there's 2 red books, so I know that one of them is Berserker. And then I pick up my ship afterwards. I use Berserker before they come out, and look at that damage increase. Berserker is absolutely crazy. Okay. You'll get better at learning when you could exit the room and how long it takes for the experience drops to follow you. But you do want to try to time the experience drops to come to you and then you finish the room. Since I exited this level, they have 2 evolutions, so I have to wait for both of them. They are taking a little bit long there. Right, here it is, second floor. Another crystal room, but there is a statue, so I decided to wait for that. I probably shouldn't have used my Berserker there right away, because I knew the statue was coming out. But I do have another one here. And it does give me the run around for a bit, but I get past it. And here, because I'm Momot, I actually have Berserker up right away, so I'm able to kill this one pentagram pretty quickly. I skipped the store since I already shopped and there's not really anything I need at 20 gold. Another crystal room. That's really bad. Alright, level 8, getting close. A slime spawn, but it was in between the fight, so it was no big deal. And here I am, just using Berserker to clear out the enemies. Alright, level 9, almost there. Just follow the question marks, and they'll lead you to rooms you haven't been to. Alright, using Berserker again to clear out this room. And here, I wasn't sure I was going to reach level 9, or level 10, but I went for it anyway, and it turned out great. Alright, Kurok, just gotta hit the bomb into this door. I used Berserker here just for a very slight speed boost there to get to the door after hitting the bomb. And this cutscene actually decreases the cooldown anyway. It was no big deal. And all there is to this fight is just waiting around for a eye bomb to spawn, and you hit that into his mouth. Maybe we do like influence the AI by getting hit by something to cause him to shoot that laser mouth. But here he just shoots it anyway. On harder difficulties they won't be so willing to shoot out laser just willy-nilly. Here I get pretty lucky and he opens his mouth on his own, and I'm able to finish off the round. And that will do it. Consider joining the Power Hoof Discord to find games and tips on speedrunning. Follow the speedrunning.com page. Subscribe if you like for more crawl content. And happy running!